We're continuing with our sermon series called The Perfect Mix. And what we're doing in the series is we're looking at the very thing that you belong to, the thing you're sitting in today, and that is the church. So we're taking a look at that. And what we see in the scriptures is this, that God provides a perfect mix of ingredients that if the church would just put them into place, that they would experience something that no place else in the world could they ever experience. That they could actually become more than just a group of people sitting in a building once a week or twice a week. They could actually become something more than just the name of this building, Christview. They could actually become a people that changed the world that was around them. That was what God's desire was for the church. And that's the opportunity you have being part of this church, Christview, today, and part of God's overarching larger thing called the universal church. That's the opportunity you have. So today we're going to look at this. We're going to look at ingredient number 2. Last week we looked at truth, which was the first ingredient. This week we're going to look at what's called worship. And worship is one of the hardest things in the church to talk about. It's one of the biggest dividing things in the church that happens in America today. And the reason for that is this: it's not a logical pursuit. Worship is an emotional experience. And that makes it hard to define. It makes it hard to communicate. It makes it hard for people to fully comprehend. Because here's the thing with it, is unless you experience it, the best you can do is define it. And you can give a description to it. But unless you've experienced it, you really don't have a full understanding of what Christian worship really is. There's another area in life that's very much this way. What that area of life is this. It's the way men and women think differently. It's one of those things, unless men, you can get in a woman's mind, you'll never fully comprehend. You can define it, but that's about it. And women, unless you can get in a man's mind, you will never fully comprehend. The best you can do is define it. For example, I, as a man, can't understand how in a woman's mind, everything happening in life is emotionally interconnected, even if they're not really connected. Guys, you know what I'm talking about? Women, you know what I'm talking about. In women's minds, from the best I understand, is everything happening in your life emotionally is always connected and always there, and it never just goes away. And as a man, I can't grasp that. And if you're in a married relationship, you know the problems that causes from time to time. All right? So we don't get that. Now, at the same time, women, you can't understand how a man's mind has nothing that's emotionally interconnected, and everything is just a separate issue. So in a man's mind, women, you know this, everything can be burning down over here, and you can look at this one thing and go, this has nothing to do with any of this, and they're not connected at all. And a woman goes, how's that possible? And this leads to issues in a marriage. Because here's the thing, we can define it, we can talk about it, but we don't really understand it unless we can get it in each other's minds and actually experience it. So the best we can do is we can define it, and then in our marriages, we have to find ways to work together to overcome some of those hurdles that we can't necessarily experience but only can define. All right? Another thing, me as a man, I can't understand that when I say something, a woman just heard 23 different things. Okay? I don't know how that works. So I know I make a comment, my wife potentially just heard 23 comments. I don't even know what all of them were, and I didn't know I said them all, but she does. I don't get how that works. I know the definition of it. I know that's true, but I don't get it. Women, on the other hand, you can't understand as women when a man only hears one thing, when you obviously communicated non-verbally 23 things, right? You say your thing and your husband goes, okay, I've responded to that and I take care of it. And you go, that's not what I was really saying, right? Have you guys, you have all had that conversation? The reason for that is, men, when your wife says something, she didn't just say that one thing. She also codedly said 23 other layers of stuff in there. So she actually spoke 23 things. You only heard one and you're responding on the one, and she can't understand why you aren't responding to the other 22. And that leads to problems in the marriage. And women, you just don't understand how it is. So you think us men are insensitive. You think we're not really listening to you. We're not in tune with you. It's not that. It's just we can't comprehend that. It frustrates us because we go, I understand what you're saying. You can define that to me, but unless I experience it, I don't really get it. As I said, worship is very similar in a lot of ways. It's an emotional experience rather than a logical understanding of something. And it can only be understood by actually experiencing it in your life. So what we're going to do this morning is this. I'm going to talk about what are some of the contributing factors that lead to you having the greatest likelihood of actually experiencing genuine Christian worship in your life. Because there is a big difference between worship and Christian worship. You can go to a concert anywhere in the United States, and you can go have an emotional, almost worship-type feel at a concert. Genuine Christian worship is totally different from that. And a lot of times people confuse those. Now, I'll just be upfront with you. I've never been to a concert in my life, so I'm just speaking about that definition-wise, because people like Heather and all tell me about concerts and how wonderful they are. And I sit there and go, why go pay to hear something that I can hear on the radio that's better quality than if I go see it live? Why waste my money on that? I'd rather just listen to them on the radio and get the better performance that way. So I don't go to concerts because they're a waste of my time. So just so you understand that. But a lot of people go, I go to a concert and I get an experience of worship. How's that different from a Christian one? Well, a Christian one involves God. And it's a totally different, unique experience. And these are the contributing factors. I would call these the 3 keys you need to understand to experience genuine Christian worship or have the best shot at experiencing it. The first key is this. It's your environmental setting. Okay? What's happening around you, your environmental setting. Now, as you mature in your faith, you start to understand what is not part of that environmental setting. And this stuff steps on people's toes. You're just going to have to live with it because I got to speak this stuff. So environmental setting. What we think a lot of times as environmental setting really isn't issues about worship. And let me just share what I mean. You learn as you mature in your faith, location has nothing to do with the ability to worship. Whether you are in a church, whether you are in a storefront having church there, whether you are in a house, whether you are in a tent, or whether you are in a field somewhere in the middle of Asia or Africa, it does not affect your ability to experience genuine Christian worship. That and part of the environment has nothing to do with if you can experience genuine Christian worship. It has nothing to do with the look of your environment. I've had people, and it shocks me again, understand, I didn't like the church for 20 years of my life, so I've read the Bible and I go, this is what I intend, and then I see other things, I go, how's that come out of the Bible? Because I never saw that. There's a lot of people that actually think how this looks in here actually affects if you can have genuine Christian worship. I've actually heard people say to me, you can't worship God in a gym, it has to be done in a sanctuary. What? How's that work? That's not biblical. That has nothing to do with the scriptures. There's nothing spiritual about that. That's not true. It has nothing to do with the look. Whether you are in a sanctuary or you're in a gym, whether there are stained glass windows or you have basketball rims down and you have white lights in here and there's basketballs laying on the floor up here. It doesn't matter. That has no contributing factor whatsoever to your ability to experience Christian, genuine worship. Another thing people mistake is symbols. They think symbols somehow contribute to the ability to have Christian worship. And what I mean by that is crosses. That we somehow think because that cross is on there, somehow God's more here now. If that cross is there, there isn't a cross there. That somehow that makes the environment right for God and for you to experience genuine Christian worship. Let's be honest here. The early church didn't have a cross, and they worshiped God. The cross was not something really great to the very beginning of the church. I came a little bit later, but it wasn't this great, wonderful thing that they hung on church walls and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with it. Some churches have, we don't have them here, but have you ever heard of like the Lord's table? Like where they set the communion? I've heard of churches where if they move that, people freak out and go, you can't do that. You're removing God from the sanctuary and you can't worship without that there. And I'm going, I said this to the ministers, isn't it like just wood? It's just like a table, right? How in the world does that contribute to being able to worship God? I don't get it. I don't get what's going on. I've had others, the baptistry. There has to be a baptistry. And if the baptistry is not there, you can't worship God because that's a symbol of God. And I'm going, sorry, I don't see anywhere in the scriptures where a baptistry is a contributing factor to be able to experience genuine worship. What I do know is this. when you mature, as you mature in your Christian faith, what you start to realize is what the environmental setting really is. It's about the people around you. It's about what's happening with the people. And the people, no matter where you are the people. And here's what I do know. The environment the people have when they come in here and the environment you have amongst each other is a hugely significant part of actually experiencing genuine Christian worship. Which means this: if you are at peace with each other, if you love each other, if you encourage each other, if you are a situation where you come in and it's inspiring to be around the other people and they lift you up, the likelihood of you experiencing genuine Christian worship skyrockets. On the other side of it, if you have bitterness, if you have gossip, if you have slander, if you have people that don't like each other, if you have issues of unforgiveness and things like that sitting amongst the people, the likelihood of experiencing Christian worship in a church plummets. And the best you get to is maybe you get like a concert feel and you might get an emotional thing, but it's not God. And it's the huge determining factor. Let me give you scriptures that talk about this. Paul and the other authors of the New Testament, they're very specific on this, and they talk about this all the time in the scriptures, and somehow we miss it a lot of times. Here's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians. He says, I appeal to you, dear brothers and sisters, by the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, to live in harmony with each other. Let there be no divisions in the church. Rather be of one mind, united in thought and purpose. For some members of Chloe's household have told me about your quarrels, my dear brothers and sisters. And he goes on and goes, get rid of it. Stop that stuff. And what he says is you are to be unified. You are to be unified in purpose and thought as a church body. And he goes, Chloe's household is telling me in your body, there's disharmony. There's conflict. And he goes through another list of it after that, and he just says that's not how it's supposed to be. Why? You won't experience genuine Christian worship if that's the type of atmosphere that's going on. There has to be unity. In Ephesians, Paul writes this, chapter 4. He says, always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. Does this scripture not sound like Paul's greatest desire is you love each other and you have harmony together? Is that not what he's saying? You do whatever you have to do to find harmony and peace with each other, because that's what I desire from God's people, and that's where God shows up. In Philippians, he writes this. He says, then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and purpose. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourself. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Paul's lining out, folks, the church, this is who you're supposed to be. We're to be a collective group who loves each other, who cares for each other, who builds each other up, not tear each other down. And he's going, for there to be effective Christian worship in this church, there better be harmony, there better be unity, you better be on the same mind length of unity and what your purpose is. The last thing we see in this, and this is very specific, in Romans 15 it writes, may God, who gives us patience and encouragement, help you live in complete harmony with each other as is fitting for the followers of Jesus Christ. Then you can join together with one voice, giving praise and glory to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. So he says when you have complete harmony, which is fitting for people, when you're encouraging each other, that's where you can join together and actually worship God in Christian worship. That's what he says. He says, then you can worship. Then you can raise your voices together. When you achieve this aspect within your body, that's what you do. So often we think about environmental factors and we think about stuff that we can touch and feel. And I believe scripturally, the environmental factors was your lives, our lives, and how they interact with each other. That's what made the right environment for Christian worship to happen. The second key to experiencing genuine Christian worship is this: your focus of the moment. What are you focused on when you come in here on a Sunday morning to worship and Heather gets up here and gets ready to lead with the worship team? What are you focused on? As you mature in your faith, you start to understand this. Genuine Christian worship has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. You start to realize this. If you come into worship time focus on what you're going to get out of it for you, you have misplaced your focus. If you step in here on a Sunday morning and your purpose of worship is, I can't wait for what this is going to do for me, you've misplaced your focus. Now, as you mature, you start to get that. If you are a younger Christian, which a great group of you are in here, newer to the faith, you're going to be struggling through this stuff. These are things that you want to learn as you go through. But as you mature, you start to figure this stuff out. Yeah, it has nothing to do with me, and I'm not here to get something out of it for me. The other thing you realize is this. It's not about the songs you sing and the songs that you like. One of the things you will find is churches across the country all sing different songs. So often we've gotten caught up with this. When I come to worship, I hope Heather's singing the songs I want. That's what we do. I'm coming to worship. I hope she sings those songs that I want. And if she does, that gives me a shot at really experiencing worship this morning. Let me tell you something. That has nothing that contributes at all, because that's self-centered. That's not about you. I've been in, well, the first church I was in, I didn't care, because I wasn't a Christian yet. I've been in 3 churches where I was a Christian. The first one was probably more of a traditional, with those early choruses. You guys know what I'm talking about, like the Awesome God song where it was like 4 words, but you sang it like 50,000 times. And okay, but it was when choruses first started shifting. I actually led the more contemporary service at that first church I was at, and I led that one. So I was at that one, and here's the thing I can tell you. I didn't really care for any songs, but I learned to worship there. And I experienced worshiping God there genuinely. Because over time, you just get used to it and you learn, okay, this is the worship, and I'm here not for me, I'm here for God, and I learned this stuff. Second church I was at, my last church up north, very contemporary, very young church, almost rock style to some extent, very contemporary. I hadn't really experienced that before until I got there, and when I first got there, it was a little strange for a while, and then after a while, I learned the songs, and I learned to worship genuinely with God, because it didn't matter the songs, because I'm with God's people. The atmosphere was good. That was fine, and I wasn't there for me, and I wasn't there for my songs, and over time I just learned, and I learned how to worship there. I came to this church, another style I'd never been part of. I'd never seen a style. When I first came here, it was very much Southern, I don't even know what you call that, Southern gospel? Is that maybe? It was like Kurt something. Does anyone remember those days? Those of you that are long-timers here? It was like, what's that? I'm just saying, it's something I'd never really experienced before. I'd never seen the Southern gospel style before. And we've been through a progression of that stuff. But when I first got here, and we sang a lot more like the traditional hymns, which I'd never heard before, and they're not my style whatsoever. And the thing was, throughout that whole time, I've never had a problem worshiping. Why? Because it's not about the songs to me. The songs have no ability to dictate if I can worship God or not, experience genuine Christian worship. Songs just don't matter. And I've started to realize that the older I get in my Christian walk. The other thing is if you come in here, focus on the quality of the production. Again, your focus is misplaced. If you come in here going, I'm looking for the quality of this thing, and if the quality is not just the way I'm looking for the quality to be, I can't worship. That's misplaced. That shouldn't be the thing. You can go to what's the big church on the move down here? They'll do a production that I could never even dream of putting on here doing. And you can go there and you can have a great production. Doesn't mean you're going to worship God any better. You can go to a little church that's 80 people that might have all sorts of production issues. One of the things I like about Heather is if any one little thing goes wrong, which 99% of us have no clue it does because we're not musically inclined, every one of them bugs her to death, drives her up a wall. I have to hear it all day Monday about how, it was so terrible, and stuff like that. But and what I tell you all the time is no one notices, right? I always say, no one really knows. Production, if that's why you're here and you think that's a contributing factor to you actually being able to genuinely worship God, you're misplaced. The production really doesn't have anything to do with it. So what does make the focus of the moment right and conducive to experiencing genuine worship? Here's the thing. As you realize, or as you mature, you realize it's all about one person, God. That's it. Nothing to do with you. You start to realize the only thing it's about is Him. It's about I am here to experience His presence. Not for myself. I'm here to experience His presence. I am here to acknowledge His authority over my life. That He is the authority in my life. That's what you're thinking as you're here. I am here to honor Him with my worship. I'm not here for Him to honor me with His worship and to honor me with His presence. I'm here to honor Him with my worship because he's my God, he's my creator. That's the atmosphere of the mind when you're here. All right? It's all about God. It has nothing to do with you if you want to experience genuine Christian worship. Psalm 66, 1-4, it says this. The psalmist writes, "Shout joyful praises to God, all the earth. Sing about the glory of his name. Tell the world how glorious he is. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Your enemies cringe before your mighty power. Everything on earth will worship you. They will sing your praises, shouting your name in glorious song." Let me ask you a question. Does this guy ever reference himself in any way, shape, or form? Nothing. There's absolutely no mention of him. It's all about who? The wonder and the greatness of him. Not about this guy. That type of a mindset puts you in the right place to experience genuine Christian worship. Let's go to the third key. The thoughts on your mind. Here's the other thing. When you come into worship on Sundays, it's very, very easy to be thinking about everything other than what you should be thinking about. Here's some of the things we think about. I've been there. I'm with you. I'm right along with you. I have to go to the bathroom. How full is my bladder right now? Can I make it through service? Or do I need to take out right now and go, to the bathroom? Maybe the better thought might be when I first come in the doors, maybe I need to go use the restroom even if I'm only 30% full so I can make sure I don't have to exit out during worship. Okay? That might work for you. Just a hint when you come in so that you're not having to think about that when you're in here. Some of the times we sit there and we go, man, I'm thirsty. Can I go get a drink? Can I go do something like that? Folks, that shouldn't be on your mind when you're in worship. Thirst should never cross your mind. When you come in the doors, if you get thirsty typically, go get a drink before you come in here. Take it then so you're not thirsty for a whole hour in here when you can go without liquid. You'll survive. You live in America. I guarantee you're getting plenty of liquids. All right? Another thing we get caught up on is this, catching up on life with other people. How was your week this week? And while we're worshiping, we're talking about life with our neighbor that's sitting next to us. Okay? Worship is not about the person sitting next to you. You can catch up with that before church, after church, the few minutes in greeting time, whatever. Make time to get here to do those things then so when you're in worship, you can focus on one place. There. All right? Another thing we do. What family member ticked me off when I came in here today? Okay? That's another one. I had a bad car trip here. I'm angry at someone in my household, and I'm in worship right now going, run through all things that tick me off about my family member right now. That's not what you're supposed to be thinking when you come to church for worship. Another area we get, what are my kids doing in service? Some of you, your kids sit away from you, and half the time you're sitting there staring at them, trying to figure out where they are. My son this morning had his cousin here with him, and Steve was right back there as I was giving him the speech, and I'm like, you guys sit there, and you can sit there alone as long as I see you worshiping and all. But during the worship, I'm sitting there staring at them the whole time. Okay, the first two songs, I sing a little bit because I'm prepping my sermon, which is bad anyways, because I still don't have confidence to do that. And I'm sitting there making sure my kids are behaving. I don't even know what songs we sang. I kind of know what they were. I know, this is great to know. I'm being honest with you. I'm not in a different boat than all of you. But we get caught up thinking about so many things that will distract us and stop the ability for us to experience genuine Christian worship. The last thing we focus on is all the stresses going on in our lives. We can sit here and we can be worshiping, and we can be thinking about all the different things in our life going on that have to get done and all that stuff. And somehow you have to find a way to turn that off for the time you're here. Because what you find out is this, to experience genuine Christian worship, you need to clear your mind and you need to think about the right things. And none of those other things are the right things. Here are the right things. When you get in here and the music starts, clear your mind. And you need to think about God's grace, not what family member just ticked me off. You need to think about how grateful you are that God has forgiven you. Because we're all failures. We're all sinners. We all have issues. But yet the God of the universe goes, I don't hold that on your account. I grant you grace. You need to think about that and be in awe of that and prepare your hearts and your mind for that and go, man, that's incredible. You need to be thinking about God's love. The fact that the God of the universe loves you so much that he sent himself down here in Jesus to live our lives, to be brutalized by us, insulted by us, beat by us, and crucified on a cross for us. And how much he must have loved us to go through all that. You need to think about that. And you need to understand his love. You need to think about his blessings. and look at your life, and instead of coming in being ungrateful for all the things or all the problems and being focused on all the problems you have, think about all the things you don't deserve that God has blessed you with and be thankful in your heart for it and go, God, I deserve nothing good, and anything I have good in my life, the fact that I even have a spouse sitting next to me or a child sitting next to me, that's something I can give you glory for because that's a blessing I don't deserve. And you need to think about his blessings. You need to think about his greatness and just be overwhelmed by how vast and how great he is. I remember this up north. It's one of those things that still I miss at times. And I can do it in my backyard a little bit just because there's not as many city lights. But if you ever go out and just stare at the night sky, to the point that sometimes, if you've been out there, you can see the satellites. Sometimes you can track them. If you get your eyes focused and you sit there long enough, you can actually see the satellites going across the sky. Have you been there before? Staring at the night sky. And the only thing I can always think when I'm doing that is you understand how vast the universe is and how incredible your God is. And all I ever feel is just overwhelmed by how incredible he is and the fact that he loves me. And I go, that's amazing. You need to think about that when you come in here to worship. I really believe, folks, if you put these three things into place, you have an opportunity to experience something extraordinary that you cannot experience anywhere else in this world. You may actually experience genuine Christian worship. You may experience the actual presence of God that you just knew about before, but now you start to experience it for the first time and you really get it. And if you experience the presence of God in your life, let me tell you what happens. It will satisfy even the very core of your soul. And the things that you used to come in here for about you get taken care of because you're focused about him. And then we do it so often the other way, which is I come in here for me, hoping somehow that through the production, everything else, and the songs and all that, somehow it fills me. And the weird part of it is if you would just let go all that and focus on him, he would do all that in your life without you ever even desiring it. Because the presence of God satisfies your soul. So what we're going to do to close this morning is I'm going to give you an opportunity to actually worship God and possibly experience his presence. And that's why we did things differently today. All right? So what we're going to do is this. I want you to stand up where you're at. And worship team, if you want to come up on stage while we do this. And as they get up here, here's what I want you to do next. Close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. Just relax. And I want you right now to forget about where you are. Where we are here means absolutely nothing, folks. Forget about where you are. This room means nothing. This location means nothing. The symbols on these walls mean nothing. The only thing that matters is the fact that you are standing here before God with 150 other believers ready to worship him. That's it. That's the environment you need. Make that up in your mind. Now I want you to remind yourself that for the next few moments, nothing has to do with you, but everything has to do with God. Don't worry about what you will get out of this, but think about what you are going to offer your God. You're going to worship him. That's the only thing you need to be thinking about. And finally, clear your thoughts. Relax. Forget about everything else other than God. Remember what he has done for you. Remember how much he loves you. Remember the blessings he has provided you. And focus on his greatness. And let it overwhelm you. Okay, we're going to have Heather and the team lead us into worship. Calm yourself. Worship him however you feel to worship him. And give him glory and honor. Heather, lead us.